Summary of Dazzling written by Chikodili Emelumadu. Chapter 1. On the day Ozoemena's world crumbled with the tragic demise of her uncle Odiago, the atmosphere in their home became a dissonant symphony of panic and despair. Shot multiple times by heartless armed robbers, Odiago's body lay lifeless, a stark reminder of the brutality that life could unleash. The house echoed with the chaotic shuffling of feet, the frantic rustling of medical supplies, and the overpowering scent of blood, an indelible mark of violence etched into the very fabric of their existence. 8-year-old Ozoemena, a keen observer of the emotional undercurrents in the room, felt an itch on the middle of her back that defied all attempts at relief. Unbeknownst to anyone, this persistent itch became a silent companion, a somatic manifestation of the internal turmoil that gripped her. In the midst of the unfolding tragedy, she chose silence, intuitively understanding that the room required her muted presence. Her mother, a whirlwind of distress, moved between the makeshift medical storeroom and the laundry room on the topmost floor, pulling out packets of needles, scalpels, and bags of intravenous fluids. The urgency in her movements reflected the desperate attempt to salvage Odiago, while auxiliary nurses, like shadowy figures, raced downstairs to the ground floor where her father's theater resided, behind swinging double doors that now seemed inadequate in shielding them from the harsh realities outside. The building reverberated with the absence of wailing, a prelude to the storm of grief that would inevitably descend later. Ozoemena, in her tender age, found herself grappling not only with the tragedy but also with an itch that seemed to mock her attempts at scratching. The itch, a minute yet insistent force, danced just beyond the reach of her fingers, a physical parallel to the intangible grief enveloping the house. Beside her, Mbu, her older sister at 12, cradled their sleeping baby sister on her lap. The room pulsed with anxiety, and Mbu, sensitive to sounds, smacked Ozoemena's reaching hand away. The quiet chaos of the scene unfolded with an eerie grace, and Ozoemena, with an acute awareness that surpassed her years, understood that her mother, torn between being with her daughters and navigating the labyrinth of medical urgency, needed her silence more than her words. As the day unfolded into night, the revelation of Odiago's death awaited the cold light of morning. Ozoemena's nails, now reddish crescents from futile attempts at scratching in her sleep, betrayed the subconscious turmoil that had gripped her. The morning bath, typically a mundane routine, transformed into a hellish ordeal, a baptism of grief, where she cried not only for herself but for the unraveling of her father. Before her eyes, he withered from a stoic figure to a whimpering boy, bereft of his closest sibling. In the wake of the tragedy, the customary rhythms of life stuttered to a halt. There was no school for Ozoemena and her sister that day, the routine disrupted by the weight of loss and the unspoken acknowledgement of a changed reality. Days later, the family embarked on a somber journey to their grandfather's house in Oba for Odiago's funeral. Cloaked in indigo wax print, a symbolic deviation from the customary black, the siblings prepared to bid farewell to their uncle. This wasn't Ozoemena's first encounter with death. At the tender age of 5, her best friend Nena succumbed to complications from sickle cell anemia. The memory of standing by Nena's open graveside, surrounded by classmates, schoolmates, and teachers, lingered in her consciousness. It was a whisper death, much like Odiago's, a fate sealed by circumstances beyond their control. The funeral procession unfolded against the backdrop of ancestral rites and communal mourning. The grave, wide and red, yawned hungrily, swallowing the coffin whole, with no space left for the soil that followed. The absence of Ozoemena's grandparents added a layer of somberness, a deviation from the natural order where parents should never outlive their children. The night before, during the wake, her grandmother, Mma, sat in silent grief, shoveling utaba, a traditional snuff, into her nostrils with a blunt thumbnail. The women of the village consoled her, their ululations carrying into the night, leaving a chilling residue on anyone who heard it. Ozoemena, amidst the canopies in her grandfather's compound, played games with her numerous cousins, seeking refuge from the weight of mourning. When fatigue set in, she eavesdropped on conversations, a silent witness to the adult world that often dismissed children until they proved their worth. The gospel band played songs of heavenly consolation, loudspeakers blasted, and the generator rumbled in the background. The night passed, giving way to the stark reality of morning. Amidst the communal grief, Ozo Emina found herself grappling with a question that echoed in her mind like a distant drumbeat. Turning to her sister, Mbu, she inquired about the elusive concept of a hard death. The jollof rice, served hot, provided a mundane backdrop to an inquiry that held weight beyond its apparent simplicity. Mbu's sharp response, coupled with a warning not to let their father hear such questions, added an air of mystery to the already complex tapestry of their circumstances. The funeral feast, with its communal sharing of food, became the stage for Ozo Emina's encounter with the mysterious boy. The Indigo Wax sisters navigated the gathering, the plastic plate of jollof rice warming in Ozo Emina's hands. The boy, an anomaly amidst the familial congregation, stood at the goat pen, seemingly absorbed in his own thoughts. Initially hesitant, Ozo Emina felt the weight of her grandfather's ownership of the compound. Asserting her presence, she approached the boy, issuing a gentle warning about being in a place where he might not be welcome. The boy, seemingly unperturbed, remained focused on the animals. The goats nestled in dried mud pens, the chickens darted around a nearby area, and the zinc roofing crackled under the sun's unrelenting gaze. As Ozo Emina threatened to call someone to address the boy's presence, a sense of embarrassment tinged her voice, a reflection of the good manners instilled by her mother. Yet, the boy remained unmoved. The pens, constructed from dried mud and wooden posts, offered a rustic backdrop to the unfolding encounter. Chuzzy, the resident dog, sensed an intrusion. Ozo Emina, turning away from the boy, began her journey past the pit latrine and towards the back of her grandmother's cluttered kitchen. The air was thick with the tools of her grandmother's trade, hoes, machetes, and empty jute bags. The red earth clung to everything, bearing witness to a life deeply rooted in tradition. In the periphery of her vision, Ozo Emina glimpsed a wire basket of dried fish suspended from the sooty beam over the spot where her grandmother kindled the wood fire for cooking. The back of the kitchen, a repository of utilitarian chaos, contrasted sharply with the mournful atmosphere of the funeral gathering. Intent on rounding the bend and alerting the women. Stirring tripod iron pots, Ozo Emina's attention shifted. The dog, Chuzzy, exhibited signs of agitation, her ears pricking up in response to an unseen disturbance. It was a forewarning, a subtle cue that heightened Ozo Emina's senses to an impending danger. In that moment, the mysterious boy revealed his presence, his actions transcending the ordinary and venturing into the realm of the inexplicable. Chuzzy, in a frenzy, rose, growling, as the boy placed a hand on Ozo Emina's back, directly over the persistent itch that had accompanied her since the tragic events began unfolding. What happened next was an eruption of pain, intense, searing, and all-encompassing. Ozo Emina's mouth opened wide, forming a silent scream that reverberated within her, while Chuzzy, tethered by a chain, went berserk. The boy, in an act that defied understanding, whispered an apology, his breath a cooling breeze against the backdrop of the unfolding chaos. The women, immersed in their cooking duties, oblivious to the unfolding drama, would eventually be drawn to Chuzzy's frenzied barking. The sight that awaited them, Ozo Emina crumpled on the ground, her funeral blouse torn open, and the beginnings of a welt on her skin, would elicit cries that blended alarm with sorrow. MMA, alerted by the unusual commotion, would leave her room and rush to the scene. Her response, a mix of laughter and tears, would confound the onlookers, wondering if grief had begun to unravel her sanity. The women, compelled by MMA's directive, would lift Ozo Emina, still caught in the clutches of pain, and summon her father from the front of the compound. Ozo Emina's father, an epitome of stoicism, would arrive, his silence echoing louder than any words he could utter. The delegation of priests, offering heartfelt condolences, would be met with a grim silence that lingered long after their departure. His wife, seeking solace and understanding, would receive no verbal response. In that moment, the unspoken turmoil within Ozo Emina's body would resonate with the enigmatic apology whispered by the mysterious boy. The aftermath of this surreal encounter would become a chapter in Ozo Emina's young life, a chapter marked by the intersection of the mundane and the inexplicable, the pain of grief, and the mysterious actions of a boy whose presence transcended the boundaries of understanding. In the days that followed, the narrative would unfold with threads of pain, loss, and the resilience of a young girl navigating the complexities of existence. Ozo Emina, in her silence, would carry the weight of her experiences, the loss of a beloved uncle, the inexplicable encounter with a mysterious boy, and the unyielding persistence of an itch that mirrored the intangible discomfort within her soul. The story of Ozo Emina, woven against the tapestry of life's unpredictable twists, would serve as a poignant reminder of the profound impact of grief, the resilience of the human spirit, and the mysterious forces that weave themselves into the fabric of our lives. Chapter 2. Ozo Emina's journey to novice college was a mix of discomfort, familial tension, and the weight of academic expectations. The scorching sun bore down on them, exacerbating Ozo Emina's unease. She grappled with the consequences of her growth spurt, finding little solace in the front seat of her mother's Honda Prelude, where the sun visor offered no refuge for her burning face. The car's inappropriate fur interior added to her discomfort, a stark reminder of its unsuitability for their tropical surroundings. Her relationship with her mother, Priska, seemed strained, with Priska resembling a scorpion, ready to sting at any moment. The mention of medicine hinted at an underlying health issue that added another layer of complexity to their journey. Ozo Emina's internal struggle with her sister, Mbu, also played out during the trip, highlighting the widening gap between them. Once close, they now navigated the journey of adolescence with Mbu asserting her seniority and Ozo Emina grappling with the changing dynamics. The narrative provided a glimpse into Ozo Emina's academic challenges, especially her near miss in the common entrance examinations. The one-mark difference haunted her, creating a sense of urgency to prove herself in the upcoming exams. Her teacher, Madame Ozioma, offered words of comfort, emphasizing her intelligence, but the shadow of the missed opportunity lingered. As the journey unfolded, Priska's impatience surfaced, evident in her abrupt questions and reactions. The car ride became a stage for academic interrogation, with Priska demanding the recitation of the 12 times table. Ozo Emina, feeling the pressure, stumbled through the exercise, and Priska's dissatisfaction hung in the air. The narrative delved into Ozo Emina's desire for distraction, lamenting the changed dynamics with Mbu and the discomfort of her sister's seniority. The mention of Mbu sending her on errands for sanitary towels added a layer of humiliation, underscoring the challenges of growing up in a society that scrutinized and judged. The story unfolded against the backdrop of the upcoming presidential elections, with posters covering every available surface. The descriptions painted a vivid picture of the political fervor and chaos that accompanied such events. Ozo Emina's reflections on her family's tragic past, marked by her uncle's death and her father's paranoia, added a layer of unease and vigilance to the journey. The arrival at novice college marked a shift in the narrative. The school, though lacking imposing gates, exuded an air of significance. Priska's encounter with a man named BC, who welcomed them to the school, hinted at a new chapter in Ozo Emina's life. The story left readers on the cusp of discovery, as Ozo Emina prepared to navigate the challenges of the academic environment she hoped would liberate her from the one-mark shortfall that had defined her recent past.